My wife betrayed me for 4 years with another man, and I only found out after her tragic passing in a car accident. What should I do now? Rafael Bina and I were having breakfast at our hotel, talking idly, both of us probably calculating the healthy commissions we were going to earn when the executives from Cantu INF signed our company's $12 million software proposal later that Wednesday morning. Then, he would fly back from Wichita, Kansas, to Indianapolis, Indiana, and I would drive home to Fort and would be eating another of my wife's excellent meals at 6:30 in the evening. Not many men had a life as good as mine, I thought as I drank my coffee. I had a beautiful 47-year-old wife who looked 10 years younger and who was an excellent cook. And, of course, a healthy commission check about to arrive. Life was really good. And then, my damn cell phone ruined things by ringing. I looked at the caller ID and made a gesture of surprise, which made Raphael also look up, worried. The caller claimed to be someone from the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I was quite sure that I did not know anyone in Ohio. Les Kendall speaking. I answered, as I would any business call. How can I help you? I heard an intake of breath, then a young, hesitant voice began to speak. Mr. Kendall. This is Sergeant Michael DeWitt of the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Your wife, Emily, has been in a serious traffic accident and was taken to the University of Toledo Medical Center. The voice spoke for about another minute after telling me my wife was in the hospital, but, honestly, I only heard wah, wah, wah. The only thing that mattered now was getting to Toledo. What is wrong, Les? If I can do anything to help, just tell me. Raphael quickly communicated. Emmy has had a car accident near Toledo. You have to finish the paperwork for this deal, and I have to go to my wife. Understood, I said hastily. I will take care of it. Go see Emmy. I will let the office know what has happened. Good luck with everything, he replied. I literally ran back to my room, picked up my suitcase and my things, and called the airline to change my flight back to Indianapolis. Wichita is not exactly a major hub, so there are not many flights from there to anywhere, but I was able to get one at 9:45 back to Indy. Fort Wayne has its own airport, but there were no flights from Wichita there. I knew it would take me about 9 hours to get to Toledo, so I first called my in-laws from the car and told them what was happening. They lived in Pittsburgh and could be in Toledo in about 4 hours. Then, I called our son at the University of Georgia and our daughter at the University of Colorado and told them what I knew, which was not much. It was my son who first wondered what his mother was doing outside of Toledo in the early hours of the morning when she had to teach in Fort Wayne that day. I have no idea, Jake. No idea. I guess I will find out when I get to the hospital. I told him. Mom's parents are on their way. I guess they will call me when they know something. I got off the highway halfway there and called the hospital. First I endured the switchboard bingo, then I got the runaround in the emergency department. I hung up and called my father-in-law. What is happening, Dad? I am not getting answers from the damn staff when I call. I said. It is not good, Les. She is very bad, he said. Apparently, a truck hit her, crushed her pretty badly. There are a lot of people running back and forth. The only thing they have told us is that she is holding on. I was probably an hour from the hospital when my father-in-law called back, sobbing. He was mostly incoherent, but I understood he was telling me that Emily had died. I pulled over to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and burst into tears. My wife of 24 years, my best friend and my soulmate, was gone. I must have cried for 15 minutes before I could get myself under control and get back on the highway, although at a much slower speed. I called both children and gave them the bad news. They took it as badly as I did. My in-laws and I hugged in the room with Emily's lifeless body when I arrived at the hospital. She looked horrible. The doctor came and told me that she died of massive internal injuries, although she also suffered many broken bones, cuts, and scrapes. A state trooper found us after a while and gave us the details of the accident report. The accident occurred at approximately 5:45. Emmy was heading west, towards Fort Wayne, on US 24. I admit my mind was cloudy, but, prompted by what my son had asked, I was more than a little confused about why my wife would be outside of Toledo at 5:45, when she had to be in Fort Wayne to teach at 8. The trooper had no idea either. When I asked that question out loud, I noticed that both in-laws also seemed surprised, although my father-in-law's surprise seemed much more intense. My in-laws followed me back to my house in Fort Wayne, and the children flew in. We took turns calling various friends and family with our sad news. The funeral was set for 5 days later. I think, combined, We all shed enough tears to help fill the 3 rivers in the Fort Wayne area. The children and my in-laws left 2 days after the funeral. My parents stayed 1 more day. Then, I wandered around the house like a zombie for 2 days before deciding to start living again. God, she was a beautiful woman. I remembered looking into those big brown eyes for the last time on Monday morning, when we kissed goodbye before I left for the airport and she left for school. I usually traveled once a month, and one of us always called the other every night I was away. She told me that Tuesday night that our house always felt so empty when she was alone. Now it was my turn to be alone at home every night. I took a sip of my angel's envy as I remembered our last conversation. Then, Jake's voice in my head interrupted my daydream. If Emmy was home alone on Tuesday night at 9, when I called, why was she outside of Toledo on Wednesday morning when she had the accident? The police had used the driver's license and Emmy's purse to locate me on the day of the accident. They returned both the purse and her cell phone to me, but I had not touched either of them in the following weeks. Both were on a kitchen counter, where I had put them when I got home after the accident. Honestly, I had never checked my wife's phone before because I trusted her completely and would never consider invading her privacy. After charging her dead phone, I was surprised when I tried to open it, and it was password protected. I had not used a phone in some time, as I have my own, but the last time I knew, she did not have a password. Not that it was that difficult for me to figure out, since I am something of a computer geek and I knew all her important dates and events. Checking the text messages, someone named Simi, who names their kid Simi, anyway, Valentine, had almost as many recent messages as her best friend, Rita Hather. So he was the first one whose texts I checked. I did not have to look any further. The two had been texting several times, almost every day, for months, maybe more. I stopped scrolling back after a while. The only gaps in the text messages seemed to be when I was out of town. The text messages were flirty and sexual, at least dating, lovers at worst. I was sick to my stomach and enraged as I read more. There was no doubt in my mind that Emmy was involved in a torrid affair with this guy. Could it be I never saw the signs? Was I that clueless or too trusting? I guess at this point it really mattered. Once I was done with her phone, I turned to her purse, gently dumping the contents on the counter. The only interesting thing I found was her keychain. It contained a key fob for her car, the house key, and a key that said Cabin 10 Arms 265. I had no idea what Cabin 10 Arms was, so I turned to my good friend Google and found out it was a luxury apartment complex in Toledo. She had a key to a man's apartment. I did not see anything good coming out of that. The next day, I worked until noon. Then I took the rest of the day off and drove to Toledo, arriving there in the mid-afternoon. I walked into the lobby of Cabin 10 Arms as if I owned the place and took the elevator to the 2nd floor, assuming the owner of the apartment would be at work at that time. I used the key and went in, and I knew immediately that Simime Valentine and my late wife were more than lovers. At a quick glance, I saw several Tomas Kincaid collections along the hallway and in the living room. I knew they were bought for or by Emily. Our house also has more than a few of those ornaments. I wandered around, checking things out. I could tell it was a man's place, but that a woman had been spending time there. I noticed several feminine toiletries in the bathroom, but the biggest revelation was when I checked the closets and drawers in the master bedroom and found more than a few items of Emmy's clothing. Although by now I knew what I would find, I still felt devastated seeing it all. I went to Simi's refrigerator and found several Coronas along with an uncut lime, which I quickly cut into usable pieces. Then, I sat down, waiting for the man of the house to return. He walked through the door around 4:20, and almost, when he saw me sitting on his sofa. Then, recognition appeared on his face, quickly followed by concern. Something is wrong, right? I knew it. She has not responded to a single message or call in the last 2 weeks, Simi said, without bothering to introduce himself or wait for me to say anything. I was surprised that he seemed to know who I was and did not seem to fear that I would hit him. Maybe that is why I thought I would start by giving him the benefit of the doubt. She has not texted or called because she is dead. She died in a car accident 2 weeks ago, driving back from here. I growled. His face turned a deadly white before he let out a howl like a wounded animal. He collapsed on the floor and burst into sincere tears. I was stunned by what seemed to be genuine grief. He acted as if there was not a strange man sitting on his sofa drinking a beer. He cried for 5 minutes before I heard his sobs subside. Hey, buddy, do you want a beer? I have already got the lime cut, I offered. He looked at me as if I had two heads. I know it hurts, man. I have had 2 weeks to get used to it. I said, I want to get a beer for both of us, and handed him one. He just kept looking at me, waiting for an explanation. I took a sip of my beer, then gave him that explanation. He listened intently, with tears rolling down his cheeks. I did not know, he said hoarsely. I am so sorry, Les. My name rolled off his tongue so easily, it was almost as if he knew me personally. He could see my surprise and my discomfort. Of course I know who you are, Les. Emily talked about you all the time. She called you the love of her life, Simon said. But why you then? I whispered, almost. If I was the love of her life, why did she need another man? He smiled embarrassedly, I thought. He looked down at the carpet, then back at me. She did not need another man, he said. She was my angel. She helped me rebuild myself after my wife died of cancer 5 years ago. I am a teacher too, and we met at one of those teacher seminars. My wife had died a few months earlier. Emily was so easy to talk to. She brought me back to life. We kept in touch after the seminar, and when she told me that you gave her permission to be with me occasionally, I was stunned by your generosity. We always tried to be discreet, so she used to come here, usually when you were out of town, but it was more than just sex. We had a great connection. She called me her second husband. She always said that you were the love of her life, but that I was a good substitute. I was happy to be considered that. I was stunned. I never gave her permission for anything like what she said. Never. I never gave her permission to become your part-time wife. I shouted. I would practically never give her permission to do that. She lied to you big time. Oh, Simon said in a low voice. I even asked her again to make sure after she told me. She confirmed it. I just thought. You just thought I was one of those guys who likes his wife to be with other men? I asked, with vitriol in my voice. No, he replied quickly. I just thought you were one of those super confident guys who does not mind his wife having a little extra on the side. That is definitely not me, I said forcefully. I am sorry, man, really, he said. I totally believed her. I would not have done anything with her if she had not told me that. So, you and she have been doing it for the last 4 years, at least 2 days a month. Sometimes more, I guess? I said, yes. And for the full 5 days of the educational seminar every July, he said. We each had our own room, but we only used one of the rooms the whole week. That was probably the time we were not really discreet. There were usually 1 or 2 teachers from her school who knew what we were doing, but nobody ever told me. I wonder if she told them I had my permission too, I said. He shrugged embarrassedly. By the way, how old are you? I asked. 31, he replied. I said, despite being 16 years older than the kid, I had no doubt I could have given him a beating because I was bigger, stronger, and tougher. However, I totally believed he was telling the truth about what Emmy had told him, that I had given her permission to have sex with him. Regardless of how much I wanted to get revenge on Simon, I knew it was not the right thing to do. This was mostly my late wife's fault. Explain to me how her visits used to work. I need to know why Emmy was on the road so early, I said. Simon explained that my wife generally left Fort Wayne immediately after her school day on the first day of my trips. Then she would spend the night, but she would get up an hour earlier to cover the extra driving distance and get to her school on time. And then she would come back to Toledo at the end of the school day. She would repeat the procedure on the second day and leave again for her school on the third day, returning to our house from school that afternoon to be home several hours before my return. That seems like a huge amount of driving for a little something extra, I muttered. She said she loved me. We loved each other. I was willing to be her second man. It was much easier during the summer, he added. Since we were both on vacation, she would come here as soon as you left on a trip and then stay all night until the day you were due back. And then, the last 2 years, you let her have a couple of 5-day breaks with me in the summer. I always thought that was something beyond what a loving husband would do for his wife. At first, I was perplexed by those 5-day breaks he was referring to. Then I remembered that Emmy and a couple of friends had gone to Mackinac Island in Michigan for 5 days, both last summer and the one before. At least, that is what she told me. The hamster in the wheel that was my brain was running at full speed at that moment. She even took time away from me when I was home to sleep with her lover. I had no answer. We both fell silent. His eyes unfocused, and he started to cry again. I understood. I even felt some pity for him. It was not his fault that he became friends with someone who, eventually, stole his heart, but she lied to him as much as she lied to me. We were silent for a few more minutes as we finished our beers. Maybe in another time and place we could have been friends. Do you want to take her things home? Simi asked. The only thing I want to keep is this picture of us. I am pretty sure you do not want that. I had overlooked the photo when I was looking around his apartment. It was a picture of them with Simi hugging her from behind, his arms protectively around her. They were both smiling brightly, looking at whoever had taken the picture. They seemed to be every bit the lovers they were. My heart sank even further than it already had. That is a great picture, Simi. You can keep it. As for her stuff that is here, I do not want any of it, I said, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. I got up and walked out of the apartment without even giving him a proper goodbye. The drive back to my house felt like it took an eternity. Anger, no, rage, was quickly replacing my grief. Emmy had lied to me and cheated on me for 4 years. She had abused my trust in her and had disrespected me in the most egregious way. And worst of all, I had no way to get closure with her, the bitch. Halfway home, my focus shifted to what I would tell my children, our parents, and the rest of the families. My plate was full of pain, and, believe me, I really needed to share it. Why should I be the only one to eat this meal? I have been told that one of my best qualities is my analytical nature. I have never been prone to acting rashly, especially under pressure. Some people have criticized me for this characteristic, interpreting my calmness under pressure as a lack of passion. In particular, I pondered the pros and cons of telling my children that their mother was a liar and a cheat. I know they both loved Emmy like crazy, but now I know she did not deserve all that love. By lying to me and cheating on me, she would have caused the breakup of our family, which would not happen now because she was dead. Dead because she was driving to Fort Wayne after being at her lover's apartment in Toledo, when she should have been at our house getting ready for her day. She did not cause the accident, but she should not have been there if she had not been cheating on me. Telling the children would probably break their hearts and shatter their world, but by not telling them, I would in effect be covering up her duplicity and eating more pain. Why should it all fall on me? However, being a father, a good father, in my mind means protecting your children, God, from as much pain as possible. When all was said and done, I knew I would take Emmy's betrayal to the grave rather than tell my children. If they found out on their own, it would hurt them, but it would not have the same impact as if I told them. You know, blame the messenger. I was pretty sure Jake already had an idea that his mother was, literally, in the wrong place at the wrong time for the wrong reason. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Because she died in an accident, she gets to keep the children's full love and devotion. If she had not died, her cheating would have been discovered, and then, what would the children's reaction have been? I guess we will never know. So I would do the right thing by my children. My thoughts about the parents, however, were not so charitable. I thought that with both groups I could share my pain without filters, and they would have to swear never to let the children know anything. I invited both sets of parents to a nice dinner at our favorite restaurant the night before my children returned home for the Christmas holidays. I thought my parents would have an easier time with my news, but they would be there to help Emmy's parents get through what I am sure would be traumatic at best. I loved Ralph and Phyllis almost as much as my own parents, but I had to unload some of my pain so I could, maybe, heal and move on with the rest of my life. I had loved Emily with everything I had for 24 years. Then, in the span of 2 weeks, first I had to endure her shocking death, then learn of her surprising infidelity during the last 4 years of our marriage. I went from having a practically perfect marriage with a practically perfect wife to the abyss of discovering that my now deceased wife was a liar and that my marriage for the last 4 years was a sham. By this point, I had spent several months beating myself up for not seeing Emmy's deceit and any role I might have had in pushing her to cheat on me. Obviously, I had done something to make her go to another man's bed. I know what Simi told me was her reason, but I am an average man, and being cuckolded after 20 years of marriage hurts like a bitch. From what Simi said, Emily did not tell almost anyone about her cheating. A friend or two had discovered her with Simi at the seminar, and, I guess, the 2 friends she used as an alibi on the shopping trips probably knew. But it seemed my late wife was smart enough to remember the old adage about keeping secrets. Do not tell anyone. But if you have to, tell as few people as possible. Our house was always a focal point during the holidays when Emily was alive. We have 5 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and both the living room and the family room are also large. That meant we usually had several people staying with us for several days and several more family members coming and going during the holidays. Emily, who as a teacher always had a long Christmas break, was a wonderful hostess and a great cook, and she moved around the house like an oversized Christmas elf. The four parents and I had reservations at a high-end Italian restaurant for the first night of our family gathering. The five of us were enjoying pasta and wine for the first course when I tapped my knife on my wine glass to get everyone's attention at our table. How many of you knew that Emily had been having an affair for the last 4 years of her life? I asked, boldly and clearly. The sound of my mother dropping her fork on her plate was the only immediate auditory response I received. My parents and Emmy's father looked horrified, while Emmy's mother simply had a blank expression. The others did not notice, but I did. I knew I needed to have a private chat with my mother-in-law when we got back to my house. I gave both sets of parents a fairly detailed account of Emily's affair, as far as I knew. My father-in-law, Ralph, did his best to remain stoic in public, but I could see tears running down his cheeks. Emily was a daddy's girl, and I knew this had to be hurting him almost as much as it hurt me when I found out. I needed that outlet. But, honestly, I did not feel very proud of myself when I finished my story. The ride back to the house in my Escalade was in almost complete silence. One of the few things said was when I warned everyone in the car not to mention anything about Emmy's affair to any other family member, particularly my children. They did not need to know. Ever, I said. But if they eventually found out, I did not want it to be on the first Christmas without their mother. They deserved that, at least. And the others agreed with me, looking extremely burdened. Ralph and my parents went up to their respective bedrooms as soon as we got home. Before the three of them went up, my mother-in-law told her husband she was going to stay with me and have a glass of wine. When the others went upstairs, I poured a glass of Cabernet for my mother-in-law and a shot of 12-year-old Glenmorangie for myself, and the two of us headed to the living room. Phyllis Rogalski was still an attractive woman in her late 60s, and because of that, I always felt confident that Emily would maintain her looks for a long time. At that moment, however, Phyllis's face had taken on a deathly pallor as she sat next to me on the sofa, studying the pattern of the living room rug. "You knew, Mom." "Seriously," I whispered, barely audible. "How could you let this happen? How could you not say anything? How could you not tell me?" Phyllis took a sip of wine and sighed heavily. She turned her body towards me, but could not look me in the eye. She began to tremble, and tears fell down her cheeks. From what Emmy said, he was a very nice young man who was in a very sad situation after his wife died of cancer. They met about a year after she died, at one of those education conferences, and they hit it off right away. She said she felt great about being able to get him to finally talk about it. My mother-in-law began. "Emmy went to his house several times when you were out of town, and they would just talk for hours, before one day she finally kissed him. It was not long before they became physical. She said she loved him. Not as much as you. Less. But she had real feelings for him." "And what did you do, Mom? Did you just stand there? Did you encourage her? Did you remind her that she was a married woman, the mother of your grandchildren?" I whispered. "I guess I encouraged her. Okay, he was a handsome young guy, and the kids were already off to school, and, with your travels, why should she not get a little company? Do not tell me you never cheated on her on any of those sales trips," she said. "Never. I never broke my vows, never. How could you even think that?" I whispered. "I am sorry, Les. I guess in my mind I was rationalizing the unthinkable, giving her a way out. I was so wrong," she said between sobs. "Think about this, Phyllis," I continued. "Maybe if you had not encouraged her, she would not have been on that path, and she would still be alive. Just maybe. You might have had a role in her death." I could see the wheels turning in my mother-in-law's mind. If it was possible, she seemed even more affected than a few minutes ago. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she looked me straight in the eye. "I am so sorry, Les, for any role I might have had in my daughter's death, and for her betrayal of you. You did not deserve her betrayal, nor mine. Thank you for not saying anything at the restaurant in front of Ralph. I knew you noticed then. He would never forgive me, and, I guess, I would not blame him. I probably need to apologize to your parents too at some point in the next few days, when I can talk to them alone." She got up, took her glass to the kitchen, and went upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. My children arrived the next day, and our first Christmas without Emmy went pretty well overall. I had a lot of food and Christmas snacks prepared, and, for the festive meal, practically all the women in the family and several of the men made some kind of dish. Emmy's name was constantly mentioned, and several good memories were shared. I watched my parents and Emmy's parents throwing glances at me occasionally. I was surprised and relieved that my son never again mentioned why my wife was on the road near Toledo when she died. Emily's parents usually stayed with us until New Year's Day, but for some reason they went home a couple of days early that year. I was surprised when Ralph gave me the news, until I saw the black eye my mother-in-law had. She claimed to have fallen the night before after drinking too much wine in the kitchen with my mother. I wished her a safe trip home and just nodded at her. That was the most attention I gave her since she made her confession. My parents came into the living room a couple of hours later, both with big smiles on their faces. My mother was holding an ice pack in her right hand. "Never mess with an angry mother," Dad said, as he wrapped Mom in a big hug. "You know your mother always has your back." She gave that stupid woman a good punch when Phyllis told her what she had done. "Thanks, Mom. A good right hook, from what I saw a couple of hours ago," I said with a chuckle. I waited until everyone went home after the holidays before I started redecorating my home. I had given the children the opportunity to choose the possessions of Emmy's they wanted. I tried to give the engagement ring to Jake, but he flatly refused. "No, I would not give that ring to any girl I was going to marry. It is cursed," he said, without explaining further, but assuming I knew what he was referring to. Most of Emmy's remaining belongings were donated to the Salvation Army, although my daughter wanted her prized Kincaid collection. Things like photos with her and the children, they divided them. Any photos of just the two of us, the children left for me, but after they left, I threw them in the trash, including the large wedding photo that always hung in our bedroom. Both children noticed the disappearance of Emily's presence in my home when they came to visit. I had even replaced several pieces of furniture during the year. Jake had graduated and gotten a job on the East Coast, so he came back home to pick up what he wanted from his room. He was home for 3 days before leaving to start his career. On his last night at home, he finally addressed the elephant in the room. For most of his visit, we barely mentioned Emily, and I could see he was trying to tread carefully around me. We had eaten dinner and were both enjoying a beer afterwards. "She cheated on you, right, Dad?" Jake asked quietly. "She was coming home from her lover's place when the accident happened, was she not? That was the only reason she could have been on the road there and at that time." I looked at him and saw the regret on his face. I laughed, knowing I had never seen that emotion on his mother's face during all the time she cheated on me. "Yes, Jake. For the last 4 years, apparently," I replied, as softly as he asked. "She was driving to school from her lover's place when she was hit by the truck." "Did you know, Dad?" "I mean, before the accident," he asked. "I had no idea, Jake. You were the one who got me thinking, though, when you first asked why she was where she was when the accident happened. Once I got over the initial shock, I started to wonder the same thing. I knew when I checked her phone, but I decided to investigate on my own when I found a strange key on her keychain in her purse. It turned out to be for her lover's apartment. I took an afternoon off and went. She had clothes there, toiletries, even some of those damn Kincaid pieces. Can you believe it?" I saw his mouth open in surprise. "Seriously, you went into that guy's house? You could have been arrested," Jake said. "Maybe, but I had a key. Obviously, your mother had given it to him. But the worst part came when he finally showed up. He greeted me like a personal friend. In short, he thought I was fully aware of your mother's activities. He said she had told him I had given her permission, and he thanked me. His wife had died a couple of years earlier, and your mother had saved him," he said. "So, you believed him?" Jake asked. "Oh, yes. He gave me all the answers, too, nothing to hide. Even when I told him your mother had lied to him, he apologized at that moment, but pointed out that he believed her completely when she told him I had agreed. I considered kicking his ass just for fun, but honestly, I put this more on your mother. I would have never thought she was capable of this," I said. "So, are you still really angry with her?" he said. "More than." He asked that she is no longer around does not influence how you feel, despite you being married all those years? He looked at me, hopeful. I just shook my head. If she had not died and I had found out, I would have divorced her in a heartbeat. Plain and simple, she cheated on me for 4 of our 24 years together. Dying does not give her a free pass in my heart, I stated, unfortunately. "I get it, Dad," Jake said. Marley came home after her junior year and was busy trying to enjoy her last summer before starting a professional career after her senior year. She had gotten an internship in the public relations department of a local firm. She did notice that her mother's presence in the house was almost nil. She did not say it. I had received a 7-figure settlement from the company whose truck hit Emily and, along with the life insurance proceeds, I could retire in a much better style than I had originally planned. But at 48, I thought I had at least a decade before I stopped working. The only thing was that I had no one to share my life with, nor the desire to look for that person. Having been so hurt by Emily left me very wary of women in general. Being alone in my house after Marley went back to college for her senior year became boring after a while. At first, I did not go out much, partly because I had no idea how to do it, how to date, I mean. Emmy and I had been married for 24 years and together for 26. While I was trying to figure out what to do about dating, Sylvie Ellman literally showed up. Sylvie was one of Emily's best friends at the school where she taught, so I did not think much of it when she called me one night, a few months after Emily's death. I assumed it was one of those thinking of you calls, because we had met several times over the years at school events. I could tell Sylvie was uncomfortable when we exchanged simple pleasantries, but she recovered pretty well a minute later when she told me she was calling to ask me out on a date. I was surprised and flattered. Sylvie was about my age and was still an attractive woman, with curves, shoulder-length reddish-brown hair, and green eyes. She had divorced about 10 years ago from a cheating husband. Emily always bragged about what a good husband you were, and I guess I do not want to see a good man go to waste. I mean, if you're ready to date, she said softly. A first date led to a second, and then to a third. The third was significant because she invited me to her house at the end of the night, and we both knew sex was on the table, so to speak. I did not have to explain to Sylvie that it had been almost 25 years since I had not had relations with someone other than Emily. That was wonderful, Les. Sylvie gushed, almost in a stream of consciousness. You were so much better than Emily said you were. I cannot believe she had both you and Simi. What a lucky woman. I waited until she finally stopped chattering before I kissed her hard. Her eyes were closed and a big smile was on her face. She fell asleep shortly after, while I lay awake, digesting what she had just revealed, before finally falling asleep too. We showered together in the morning, then went to a local bakery for breakfast. I could tell she was in what I call a sexual mellow, so I thought it was the right time to get her to talk again. Did Emily really say I was not good in bed? I asked quietly, during a lull in our conversation. Sylvie blushed deeply, apparently remembering what she had told me the night before after sex. She looked around for a couple of seconds before facing me. Yes, she did, Sylvie practically whispered. That is why Nancy and I encouraged her to go for it when Simi started talking to her the first time at the conference. She said it a lot. She said you were a great husband, a great guy, but a bad lover. She looked guilty when she looked into my eyes, seeing the pained expression on my face. I guess we did the wrong thing by encouraging her, regardless of whether you were good in bed. Really? I growled. She cheated on me for 4 years with you two encouraging her and covering for her. I know about her supposed trips to Mackinac with you. She blushed deeply again. At least I know she was lying about your performance in bed. You were great in bed, Alex. I would do it again. She stopped mid-sentence when she looked at my face. I really put my foot in my mouth, did I not? She asked. I would say both you and Nancy did, I replied. Do you realize she died on the highway, coming back from her lover's house? She should not have been there. Maybe she would not have been there if you and Nancy had not been so damn encouraging. As you can imagine, there were no more dates with Sylvie. I decided to go to a quiet Irish pub a few blocks from my house after work. They had excellent food and good quality liquor, the kind that did not need to be mixed with anything to be drunk. Most of the crowd was probably 35 to 50 years old, people who were doing pretty well for themselves, but there were not many single women. I knew I had to get out of my comfort zone if I wanted to look for women to date. Several women in my office offered to introduce me to friends or family. I had turned them down for the first year or so, but I thought it was time to accept help. I went to the office of our first vice president of sales, Gigi Holmes, who had previously offered to help me, and sat in the chair across from her desk. Okay, I will admit I am pathetic. I need help meeting women, I told her. Gigi smiled. So, do you want me to introduce you or give you a list of names and numbers? She asked as I sat and fidgeted in my chair. Where do your single friends go to meet men? How about you give me that information? I asked. I can give you several places to go, she told me. She gave me a list that included 5 places. I planned to visit them on the next 5 Friday nights. The first Friday night, I went to a fancy restaurant bar with a classic rock jukebox. There was a decent number of women there, but I only talked to 2 or 3 during the night. The second Friday night, the establishment was really a bar that also served food and had a small dance floor. I was sitting at the bar when a group of 5 women came in and headed to a booth on the side of the establishment. I waited until the waitress took their orders before I looked at them and found one of the most beautiful women I had seen in the Fort Wayne area. She could not have been more than 25, with long black braids down to her elbows, big brown eyes, and an angel face. She wore a low-cut peach-colored dress that revealed a large chest and came only halfway down her well-formed and muscular mocha-colored thighs. I know I stared at her for at least a minute before I could tear my eyes away, and I discovered an attractive, curvy woman of about 45 sitting right next to her. The two looked enough alike to think they could be mother and daughter. As expected, a group of young guys soon approached their table, with the incredibly beautiful woman being the target of most of the stares. She soon went off to dance with one of the young men, and the crowd dispersed a bit, leaving the other 4 women sitting in the booth. Seeing an opportunity, I walked over to where the 45-year-old woman was sitting and asked her if she would like to dance with a slightly clumsy but well-intentioned middle-aged guy. "Yes. Where is he?" she replied mischievously, before giving me a dazzling smile and extending her hand. I am pretty sure half my brain shut off because I do not remember much of the next 15 minutes. When I came to, she was sitting across from me at a two-top table, with her beautiful white teeth smiling in my direction and her left hand on my right. When the waitress came over and asked what we wanted to drink, my dance partner looked at me and told her she would have the same as me. So I ordered 2 shots of Don Julio tequila on the rocks. "You do not look like a straight tequila drinker. Are you sure?" I asked. "Absolutely," she said, as the waitress walked away. "What do I look like to you?" "A beautiful and confident woman who is here to watch over her incredibly beautiful single niece and her 2 pretty friends," I replied with confidence. "That was an incredibly accurate deduction. Can you also guess my height and weight?" she said. "By the way, I am Cake." I looked her shamelessly up and down, raising my eyebrows and nodding as I did. I would say more mocha, but I never argue with a beautiful woman. "I can accept Cake." She laughed and smiled. Her voice was lyrical. Her laugh was adorable. "And who are you?" she asked, completely captivated. "I am also Les," I replied cheekily. "Oh no. You are definitely more," she retorted quickly. "More than remains to be seen. How did you know I am divorced?" "That is easy," I replied. "You are beautiful. You are not a little girl anymore, and you are not wearing a wedding ring. A woman as pretty as you would definitely be married by now, so you have to be divorced or the biggest bitch on the planet. So, I am guessing you are divorced, and you look enough like the pretty young woman at your table that you could be her mother, but going out with your mom is not cool, so you have to be a favorite aunt." She looked at me skeptically, then shot a brazen glance at my left hand, and I could see her mental gears turning. "You are divorced too because you are not wearing a ring either," she assessed. "It seems you have a good trick with that guessing thing. So I think you have been single for a while, and, since you are an attractive white guy, I think you are a player." Wow. I am not sure if you have insulted me or not, but I am definitely not a player. "You are almost the first woman I have been alone with since my wife died in a car accident almost 2 years ago," I said. She frowned upon hearing my statement. "I am sorry for your wife," she began, but I interrupted her quickly. "It would have been a divorce, but a truck ran over her on one of her trips back from her lover's house." I interrupted. "That is more or less how I found out she was cheating on me. This is only the second time I have been out looking, so to speak. I found out that she had divorced 10 years ago from a husband who had cheated on her twice. She forgave him after catching him the first time, but it was over when she caught him again 5 years later. Despite the 10 years that had passed, she still had trust issues, she admitted. I told her I completely understood. It turns out she really was 45 and had a 25-year-old son. We must have talked for an hour, when one of the other women who was at the table with her and her niece came over and said the group was going home. Cake got up and thanked me for the good time, then pulled a pen from her purse and wrote her number on a napkin for me. I had gotten up from my seat when she did, so she leaned towards me, put her hands on my chest, and gave me a soft kiss on the lips. Her lips were sumptuous and cushiony. Her perfume was subtle but delicious. Her tangle of black curls acted as a curtain for our faces as we kissed. "Please, call soon," she whispered softly. The young woman who was waiting for her raised her eyebrows in surprise. Cake took her hand, and the two headed for the door. I stood there, mesmerized, feeling like I was 15 again and had just gotten my first real kiss from Sushi Barlow. I drank the rest of the tequila in one gulp and headed for the door. Once outside, I dialed her number. Do you like waffles? I know an excellent breakfast spot that makes amazing waffles, I said. Then we could go to the botanical gardens or play mini golf. If you want me to beat you at putt-putt. Do you realize I am in the car with 4 young girls? So, please keep your thoughts about my butt in check, she said with a laugh. Yes, I would love to go to breakfast with you, and the botanical gardens sound good too. I heard the others laughing and teasing her as she gave me her address so I could pick her up in the morning. I heard someone ask her if she knew she was not a virgin anymore, which made me let out a loud laugh over the phone. He heard that. Bitch, she said to the people in the car. Do not ruin this for me. He seems like a good guy. I am a good guy. Just ask me, I said, making her laugh. This is what happens when you try to be nice and babysit these young people. There is no respect, she said to both me and them. Maybe because I had been with Emmy for so long. Dating Cake was completely new and exciting, as if I had been given a second chance to relive my dating youth. She was fun and funny, smart and witty, and sensual and passionate, and we had not even had relations. After 6 dates, that was my fault, and she let me know it. We had been kissing like horny teenagers on her couch for a good while, and I was not entirely sure if I should take the next step. Yes, I know. It is pitiful, but it had been so long for me. Les, stop thinking and start acting. It is time, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I smiled shyly. I am sorry for not being more aggressive, honey. You are probably not going to believe this, but I have only had 3 partners in my entire life, including my late wife. In fact, it has only been one since my deceased wife, I said quietly. It is time for number 4, love, she affirmed with a radiant smile. I assume you remember how to undress a woman. Fortunately, I still remembered my way around a woman's body without needing a map. What I did not count on was Cake's strength, which far surpassed Emmy's. We are not finished until we cuddle for a while. It is part of my connection process, I said. I like how you think, Les. Cake liked my way of thinking so much that she agreed to marry me a year later. Les could not believe that, after so many years of marriage, his wife would cheat on him. But he could not even get angry with her, since Emily passed away. But Cake came into his life, bringing affection so he could heal all his wounds.